Hello everyone, welcome back to Scary Dark Narrations. Tonight, we descend into the dead of night, a realm where reality blurs with nightmare, and the shadows move on their own. In this episode, we bring you 7 of the most disturbing true horror stories ever whispered from the darkness. Each tale comes from real survivors who faced what most of us only fear in our dreams, encounters with the unknown that took place when the clock struck midnight and the world fell silent. These aren't campfire legends or twisted internet myths. They're real experiences that left behind scars, questions, and a chill that never fades. From travelers who woke to footsteps outside their tents, to lone drivers who saw something standing on empty roads, those who learned that sometimes the shadow in the corner really is watching back, to protect the privacy of those who shared their stories. Some names and details have been changed, but every terrifying moment remains true to the horror they lived through. So turn off the lights. Let the night take over. And remember, when the world sleeps, the shadows come alive. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations for more real horror stories that will haunt your dreams and keep you wondering what's waiting just beyond the darkness. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the shadows return. The first thing I noticed was how quiet the mountains were that evening. Quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. The air felt heavy, almost watching. My van hummed beneath me as I wound through the endless switchbacks, headlights slicing across the rain-slicked asphalt. I'd driven this route for months, delivering packages to remote cabins and old logging towns no one remembered. It was lonely work, sure, but I liked it. No traffic, no small talk. Just me, the road, and the endless green swallowing everything. The only problem was the signal. Once you climbed high enough, your phone became useless. A cold piece of glass that might as well have been a rock. That Thursday, the rain hadn't stopped since morning. It drummed softly against the windshield as dusk crawled in. I was about 20 miles from the nearest town when my van started making this grinding noise, deep, metallic, like something chewing through steel. I eased off the gas. The sound got worse, rasping whenever the wheels slowed. My gut tightened. I pulled to the shoulder, flicked on the hazards, and stepped into the cold drizzle. The forest on both sides rose like walls towering pines, black and endless. No cars, no lights. Just that damp smell of earth and rain. I popped the hood. Steam hissed faintly from somewhere, though I couldn't tell where. I checked what I could, but I'm no mechanic. Everything looked fine until I tried the ignition again. It only clicked once, then died completely. The silence that followed felt thick, unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. I grabbed my phone, no bars. Not even one. I moved around holding it higher, even stepped a few feet down the road. Nothing. My jacket was already soaked through. I thought about walking to town, but it was at least an hour away through twisting mountain roads. No shoulder, no signal, and no guarantee anyone would pass. I was just standing there in that half-light when I heard its footsteps. It came from behind me, slow. Crunching on wet gravel, it turned fast, expecting headlights or maybe another driver, but there was only a man emerging from the tree line about 30 feet away. Thin, maybe in his 50s, wearing a camo jacket and a faded baseball cap pulled low. His movements were oddly deliberate, like he was careful not to startle me or maybe careful not to show something. "You okay?" he asked. His voice was flat, almost rehearsed. I told him my van broke down and I couldn't get a signal. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that happens out here." His eyes darted toward the trees behind him, then down the road. "You could use my landline, not far. Shh, just a short walk." The word landline felt strange, like something he'd practiced saying. He kept shifting from foot to foot, rain dripping from his hat brim. I thanked him but said I'd wait, maybe another car would pass. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not many cars come through after dark," he said, almost softly. Then he started asking questions, what kind of route I had, how far I usually drove, whether my company tracked me tonight. I said yes. All our deliveries were logged. He tilted his head. "So someone would come looking if you didn't check in, huh?" That was when he started rubbing something inside his pocket. A faint click-click-click sound that didn't fit the rhythm of anything. I told myself it could be a lighter, but my body didn't believe that. His tone started to drift to one sentence clear, the next half mumbled, like he was losing the thread of what he was supposed to say. I stepped back toward the van, keeping the open door between us. "Thanks for the offer, but I'll wait here. Someone's coming." He didn't move, just stood there, rain pouring down, one hand twitching inside his jacket. The other stayed in his pocket. His breathing was heavier now. I could see it in the way his shoulders rose. Then as he shifted slightly, the edge of something metal glinted beneath the light handle, dark and worn. My stomach dropped. He noticed me looking and stuffed it deeper into his pocket without a word. The air between us thickened. His smile faltered into something else, too still, too patient. I forced my voice steady. "Actually, I called my dispatcher earlier. They know where I am. Help's on the way." He blinked once. "You sure?" His voice had changed, lower now, edged. "My place is real close. Got everything you'd need." "Appreciate it," I said, inching back toward the driver's seat, but they're on their way. He didn't smile this time, didn't even nod. He just stared. Then, softly like a warning, he said, "You can't stay out here all night." I gripped the van door. "I won't." He took a slow step forward. "You don't know these woods. They ain't safe." My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear my own voice. "I'll be fine." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The rain whispered between us. Then without another word, he turned and walked straight into the trees, not down the road, not toward a house, just into the dark, like he belonged there. I stood frozen, counting the seconds. Then I got back in the van, locked the doors, and shut off every light. Then, silence swallowed everything. I sat there in the dark, barely breathing. Every sound outside felt magnified, the tick of cooling metal, the faint patter of rain, the occasional crack from the woods. My eyes kept drifting to the mirrors, half expecting his silhouette to reappear. Minutes bled into hours. My fingers trembled on the steering wheel. When headlights finally appeared, I nearly cried from relief. A single pair, faint at first, then brighter as an old pickup pulled alongside. I hesitated before rolling down the window a few inches. "You need help?" the driver asked. Voice steady, older, late 50s maybe. "My van died," I said. He nodded once, grabbed a flashlight from his truck, and popped my hood without another word. The beam of light cut through the mist, glinting off the engine. He worked fast, methodically, like he'd done it 1,000 times. I kept glancing toward the trees, the dark space where the other man had vanished. "You see someone back there?" he asked suddenly, not looking up. I swallowed. "Yeah, a guy came out of the woods earlier, said he had a landline." The man paused for a moment, then resumed tightening something. "You're lucky," he said quietly. "There's been trouble up here. Folks gone missing." One hiker found his dog back on the trail without him. A chill crawled down my neck. "Kind of trouble?" He didn't answer, just shut the hood and handed me the keys. "The engine turned over on the first try. Should head back to town," he said, stepping toward his truck. "Don't break down out here again. They've been warning people." "Who's they?" He looked at me just for a second. "Sheriff mostly. Says someone's been picking off travelers. He started the truck, only happens late. It's only out this way." Then he drove off, taillights disappearing into the mist. I followed, staying close until the forest began to thin and the orange glow of town flickered in the distance. Only then did I pull into the gas station at the edge of the main road. My hands were still shaking. I sat there under the harsh fluorescent light, engine idling, trying to convince myself it was over. But as I reached for my phone, I noticed something in the reflection of the glass movement. Behind me, across the road, at the tree line, figure, thin, still, watching, my breath caught. I turned in my seat, nothing there. It's just the dripping trees swaying under the rain, but I know what I saw, told myself it was my imagination. That exhaustion and fear were blurring reality. I called my dispatcher, said I'd finished the route, had a breakdown, but everything was fine now. I didn't mention the man. Didn't mention the knife. The next week, I requested a new route, said I wasn't comfortable driving the mountain stretch anymore.
Oh.
My supervisor didn't ask why. They just nodded, handed me a new schedule, and that was that. But sometimes, when I drive late and the road curves between the trees, I swear I still see him, standing just past the light's reach, hat dripping. One hand twitching at his side. A few months later, I heard something on the radio, a brief report. A hiker had gone missing near the same stretch. His car found on the shoulder, hood open, lights still blinking. No sign of struggle, just gone. I turned off the radio, my hands tight on the wheel. That night, I dreamed of the forest. Of the man's smile. Of the soft click-click sound from his pocket. Only this time, I wasn't standing by the van, I was walking behind him, into the woods. When I woke, my phone was on the passenger seat, screen glowing. No missed calls, no alerts. But my navigation app was open, tracking my old route through the mountains. Timestamp said 2:47 a.m., and I hadn't touched it. I still deliver packages. Different roads now. But every time I see a tree line or hear the rain start to fall, I remember that night, and the man who vanished into the dark like the forest was his home. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear it. That faint, deliberate sound. Click, click. Would you dare drive that road again? The hum of the diner lights always sounded like they were trying too hard to stay alive. They buzzed and flickered, bleeding that faint yellow glow across the greasy tiles and cracked vinyl booths. It was 1 a.m., and I was the only one there, just me, the coffee pot, and the faint smell of fried oil that never really went away. I'd been working this night shift for 6 months to pay for college, and by now, the stillness didn't bother me. At least it hadn't until that phone rang. The landline sat near the register, dusty and silent most nights. When it rang, the sharp tone sliced through the quiet so suddenly that I nearly dropped the rag I was holding. I hesitated before answering. The voice on the other end was raspy, like static was caught in his throat. He asked what time we closed. A normal question except for the hour. I told him we were open all night, paused, then asked if I was working alone. My chest tightened just a little. I didn't answer that. I just hung up. The diner went still again. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. My reflection stared back at me in the window gray hoodie, torn jeans, hair tied back in a loose bun. I told myself it was just some drunk guy being weird. But then, the phone rang again. This time he skipped the small talk. He asked how old I was, if I had a boyfriend, what days I usually worked. His tone was slower now, deliberate, like he was savoring each question. I snapped at him to stop calling or I'd call the police. He went quiet, and then said something that froze me. "I can see you through the front window," he whispered. "You're wearing a gray hoodie and jeans with holes in the knees." The air felt heavy. I turned toward the glass. Outside was nothing, just the empty parking lot, a bus stop across the street, and a flickering streetlight. But he was right about what I was wearing. I stepped closer to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Searching for movement, nothing, not even a car passing by. My throat was dry as I grabbed the phone again and called my manager's emergency number. No answer, just voicemail. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Some guys being creepy on the phone? No name, no proof? I unplugged the landline instead, convinced that would end it. For a few minutes it did. Then my cell started ringing. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again, and again. Every 10 minutes, always unknown. Around 3:30 a.m. I answered, hoping it was someone else. "I like when you wear your hair up," he said. "Should wear it like that more." I hung up so hard the phone cracked against the counter. My hands trembled as I locked the front doors and turned off the neon open sign. The diner suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. I tried to distract myself, scrubbing the same counter over and over, but every shadow beyond the glass looked like someone watching. Once I thought I saw movement near the bus stop, just a shape standing too still. But when I blinked, it was gone. By 6 a.m., when the cook came in, I had every light on and the back door double locked. I told him someone prank called all night. He stared at me too long before walking into the kitchen. I didn't even clock out. I just left. That morning I bought pepper spray. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my roommate. For a week I avoided the night shift, but the next Tuesday I went back. I told myself it was fine, that the man had moved on. The diner was quiet again, familiar, comforting even, and I saw him. He sat in the farthest booth, gray hoodie pulled low, head down. I brought him coffee, and he just said, "Thanks." Quiet, almost polite. I told myself it wasn't him. It couldn't be. Still, every time the phone rang that night, I checked the caller ID. No unknown numbers. But the unease in my chest wouldn't leave. It stayed like static, just beneath the surface. By 4 a.m., I was shaking every time a car passed outside. The phone rang twice, every 10 minutes, now always unknown. I stopped answering. The sound alone made my heart race. When I finally picked up again, his voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm going to make you scream before sunrise." Then, silence swallowed everything. The next seconds stretched like hours. I slammed the phone down and stepped back, my chest rising too fast. Every instinct screamed to run, but where would I go? Outside, the lot was pitch black. The back alley was worse. I dialed my manager again. Voicemail. The hum of the lights grew louder, buzzing, trembling like the whole building was holding its breath. I turned off my phone completely. Locked every door again. The silence pressed in until even the tick of the wall clock felt too loud. My reflection in the glass looked pale, distant. I wiped my face, pretending to clean just so I wouldn't have to look out the window. Time dragged. The ice machine clanked. A car engine echoed somewhere down the highway. I jumped at everything. When 6 o'clock a.m. came, I didn't wait for the cook. I grabbed my bag, switched off the lights, flipped the sign to closed, and slipped out the back door. The morning air was cold and still, the sky bruised with early dawn. I gripped the pepper spray in my pocket and started walking fast toward the bus stop. 4 blocks, that's all. Just 4 blocks. The city was quiet, too quiet. No cars, no people. Only the hum of traffic lights and the soft whisper of wind sliding through the empty street. I told myself I was fine, just paranoid. But then I heard it footsteps. Slow, heavy. Behind me, I turned. A man in a dark jacket, hands in pockets, 20 feet back. He didn't look at me, but his pace matched mine perfectly. I sped up. So did he. The sound of his shoes echoed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I crossed the street. He crossed too. I stopped to tie my shoe, pretending to be calm. He stopped, waiting, watching. Then I ran. The air tore past my ears, my chest burning. His footsteps thundered closer. My keys rattled in my bag. I reached the corner, just as his hand caught the strap of my purse. The yank nearly pulled me backward. I screamed, swinging wildly. His grip tightened her fingers, strong. I kicked at his knee, hard. He stumbled, teeth gritting. A bus screeched around the corner, headlights cutting through the dark. The driver saw us horn blaring, door slamming open. I ripped my purse free and bolted for the steps. My lungs felt like fire. I turned once he was gone, vanished into the alley's shadow like he'd never existed. I stood trembling at the bus door, clutching the metal pole like it could anchor me to the world. The driver asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I just nodded. My voice locked somewhere deep in my throat. He let me ride without paying. I sat near the back, shaking, staring out the window as the diner disappeared behind me. The sky lightened to gray, the city beginning to stir. My purse was gone, my ID, my keys, everything, but none of that mattered. I was alive. When the bus stopped near my apartment, I kept my pepper spray tight in my hand. Every shadow felt like it was moving. Every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps. I reached my door, locked it 3 times, and sat on the couch until the sun came up. I didn't sleep. The next morning I called the diner and quit. No explanation, no request for my last paycheck. I blocked every unknown number on my phone. But still sometimes when I'm alone at night, my phone buzzes. Once no caller, ID, no message, just that faint vibration. And I can't help but wonder, was he ever caught? Or is he still out there watching another window, somewhere else in the dark? Would you dare work the night shift again? The wind scraped across the porch rail like skeletal fingers when I first noticed him. The kind of night that hums with silence, still steady, familiar. I'd lived on this small ranch in rural Nevada for 8 years, long enough to know every whisper the land could make. After the divorce, I'd wanted solitude, somewhere so far off the map that people forgot to ask questions. Here, the night stretched wide and endless, and I could hear the desert breathe. Most evenings, I sat on that old porch chair, its wood creaking under my weight, cigarette smoke curling into the fading light. My horses grazed in the pasture beyond the barn, and the last of the sun sank behind the ridge, burning the sky orange before it slipped into gray. The nearest neighbor lived more than a mile east. I'd seen him maybe 3 times. No one came from the west. It was nothing but dry brush, hills, and silence. That night, at around 8:30, something moved out past the fence. A shadow, too upright to be an animal. At first, I thought maybe one of the neighbor's dogs had wandered off, but then I saw the shape clearly. A man walking slow, deliberate. He came from the west, from nowhere. My stomach tightened. Nobody traveled on foot from that direction unless they were lost or hiding something. I stood from my chair, every sound suddenly sharper. The crunch of gravel, the hum of crickets, the faint squeak of the porch boards under my boots. He stopped near my barn, head tilted, staring at the wall like he was inspecting it. There were no cars, no flashlights, no tools, just him. The air felt too still, as if the desert was holding its breath. "Hey!" I called out. Ow! My voice sounded too loud. "You need something?" He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just turned the corner of the barn and kept walking, slow and steady. I started toward him, boots grinding against the gravel. As I closed the distance, I felt it, that subtle, creeping wrongness. His posture was off. Too rigid, too precise. When I got close enough to see his face, the light from the barn caught him. Mid-40s maybe, worn jeans, beige shirt, cowboy hat, shadowing his eyes. He could have been any rancher in Nevada, except he wasn't supposed to be here. "Sir, you on someone's land?" I asked. Nothing. He moved to the side of my house and pressed his palms against the glass, peering inside. Then, calmly, he took a small notepad from his back pocket and started writing something. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. My voice echoed off the barn wall, but he didn't even blink. He went window to window, repeating the same ritual. Look inside, write something down. I stepped closer, blocking his path. "Tell me who you are." Still nothing. It's just that slow pivot of his body as he sidestepped me, continuing to the next window. I glimpsed the pad, neat handwriting, columns of numbers, maybe coordinates. My pulse quickened. There was no badge, no ID, no clipboard. He wasn't official. He wasn't working for anyone. He was just documenting my home. Every instinct told me to back away, but curiosity anchored me in place. He circled the entire house, methodical and silent. When he finished the last window, he turned toward the back fence, the desert yawning beyond, started walking again, the same unhurried pace, vanishing into the night. I stood there, the air thick and still. Crickets sang again, faint but distant, like the sound was avoiding the space where he'd been. I finally moved, locking every door and window, pulling every curtain tight. My rifle stayed across my lap as I sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the back door. The clock read 10:43 p.m. The house felt too cold. The kind of chill that seeped into your bones even when nothing was open. I left the lights on and tried to stay awake, but sometime around midnight, exhaustion won. When I opened my eyes again, the air was moving soft but steady, like a whisper passing through the house. And that's when I saw it. The back door, wide open. I froze. Then silence swallowed everything. The cold hit me first, sharp, unnatural, as if the desert itself had exhaled inside my home. I grabbed the rifle and crept forward, my pulse thudding in my ears. Each step felt louder than it should have been, floorboards groaning under my boots. The door wasn't swinging. It was still perfectly open, like someone had measured it that way. I cleared every room, bedroom, bathroom, pantry, nothing. No footprints, no broken locks. Just the air moving in that slow, deliberate rhythm. I bolted the door and sat again, rifle heavy in my hands, but my mind wouldn't quiet. When daylight came, I noticed what was missing. A small wooden box from my desk, gone. Inside had been family photos. My mom on her horse, my ex-wife smiling in the sun, my dad standing by the old well. The drawer with my property deed was open, empty. The spare keys for my workshop missing. He hadn't touched money or weapons, only things that defined me. By sunrise, I was in the truck, heading straight to the sheriff's office. The deputy listened closely, eyes narrowing when I mentioned the notepad. He said I wasn't the first. There had been other reports, remote houses, no forced entry, personal items missing, documents, photos, keys. Sometimes, he said, it's reconnaissance. They learn your patterns, test your response time, see how alone you really are. The word stuck with me, reconnaissance. Like I was a target being studied. That was 5 days ago. I installed cameras on every corner of the house, motion sensors by the barn, new floodlights that burn white against the desert dark. Every night I patrol the fence line with the rifle slung over my shoulder. I keep my boots on when I sleep. The land feels different now. The quiet isn't comforting anymore. It's listening. The coyotes still howl, but they stop too suddenly, as if something moves between them. Sometimes the wind shifts direction all at once, brushing against my windows like fingertips testing the glass. 2 nights ago, one of the cameras flickered. It's just static for 3 seconds. When it cleared, there was a figure by the barn, too far to see clearly, but the shape was there. Same hat, same posture. I froze, watching the feed. He never moved, never advanced, just stood there facing the house. When the motion light triggered, the image vanished. Last night I left my porch light off, sat in darkness, waited. Around 1 a.m., I heard it gravel, crunching, slow, steady steps circling the house. I gripped the rifle tighter, heart pounding against my ribs. I didn't move to the window. I didn't want him to know I was awake, then tapping, soft, measured, against the glass of my living room window. I could hear the drag of skin on the pane, then a faint scratch, like someone writing. When I finally looked, there was nothing. But in the morning, on the inside of the glass, faint lines were visible. Numbers, coordinates, almost invisible unless the sun hit them just right. The same kind of markings I'd seen in his notepad. Now I don't sit on the porch anymore. I stay inside after dark. I keep the cameras on, the rifle ready, the lights burning through the night. But I know it won't matter. Because last night, when I checked the footage from my front camera, I saw something I can't explain. In one frame, just a second long, the man was standing on the porch, inches from the door, his notepad open, pen in hand, and this morning. The notepad is sitting on my porch table. My name written on the first page. The rest of it filled with coordinates, all leading straight back to my house. Would you dare return to this place? The night was cool and hollow, the kind of air that felt to still like the world was holding its breath. I was driving Ellen home after her late shift at the hospital, both of us half dead from exhaustion. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a black ribbon slicing through open farmland and patches of trees. Ellen was slumped in the passenger seat, still in her blue scrubs. Her fingers wrapped loosely around a paper cup of coffee that steamed faintly in the dashboard glow. It was midnight Thursday. I remember the silence, the hum of tires against asphalt, and how her head tilted toward the window, her reflection ghosting in the glass. The air drifting through the cracked window smelled faintly of hay and cold soil. We'd driven this road 100 times before, empty, lonely, predictable, until that night. About 15 minutes from home, something moved in the beams of my headlights. I eased off the gas, squinting. Someone was crossing the road. First I thought it was just a farmer or a late-night jogger, but then I saw it a shopping cart. The figure was pushing it fast, the wheels squealing faintly, one of them wobbling like it was about to fall off. They didn't look at us, didn't even pause, just kept moving, dragging the cart into the dark. Ellen stirred, blinking at the windshield. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice still heavy with sleep. "Yeah," I said. "Someone pushing a cart." She sat up, frowning. "That's strange out here." I nodded slowly, already feeling the unease prickle under my skin. The person was gone, now vanished into the black. "Turn around," Ellen said. "Let's check. What if they need help?" Her tone was firm, clinical, the nurse in her taking over. I hesitated, but she looked at me the way she does when she knows I'll give in. I found a gravel driveway, reversed, and headed back. The high beams cut across the fields, white and cold. For a while, there was nothing. Then Ellen pointed. "There," she whispered. The cart sat alone on the shoulder, about 3 feet off the pavement. No person in sight. The chrome glinted faintly in the light, one wheel bent. I slowed and stopped a few feet away. Ellen opened her door before I could stop her. "Wait," I started, but she was already stepping into the headlights, her shadow stretching long and thin across the road. I kept the engine running, watching her silhouette approach the cart. My pulse thudded in my ears. "What's in it?" I called. She bent over, peering inside. "It's just junk," she said, after a moment. "Old clothes, some rags, a few newspapers. Looks like someone's been living out here." She took a few steps toward the woods, scanning the dark. "Hello, are you okay?" Her voice echoed faintly across the empty fields. No response. I felt a chill crawl across my arms. The hazard lights blinked rhythmically, throwing orange flashes across the grass. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I scanned the tree line. That's when I saw movement. At first I thought it was an animal, something small rustling through the brush. But then a shape stood up. A man, thin, dirty clothes hanging loose on his body. He stepped out from the shadows like he'd been waiting. His arms were stiff at his sides, his posture rigid. He didn't say a word, I said, my voice cracking. The man kept walking, toward her. Something glinted in his right hand, a long, thin piece of metal catching the headlights. My gut turned to ice. I slammed the horn. The blaring sound ripped through the night. "Ellen, get in the car now." She spun around, eyes wide. The man froze. For a moment, everything felt suspended in that bright cone of light. Then he stepped back, just one slow step, before melting back into the trees like smoke. Ellen ran, breathless, slamming her door shut. "Go," she gasped. I hit the gas. The car lurched forward, tires crunching over gravel. Neither of us spoke for a long time, kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see someone running after us. But the road stayed empty, just the blinking reflection of our hazards fading into the dark. Ellen's voice trembled when she finally spoke. "He came out of nowhere. Didn't even hear him. Did he say anything?" She shook her head. "No, he just walked out like he was, expecting me." The thought made my skin crawl. I tightened my grip on the wheel. What was in his hand? I don't know. Something metal. Maybe a screwdriver. Neither of us said another word. The night outside looked endless. Every mailbox and tree stump suddenly felt like something watching us. When we finally pulled into our driveway, neither of us moved. The only sound was the soft ticking of the cooling engine and the wind pressing faintly against the windows. Then silence swallowed everything. When I finally exhaled, it felt like my lungs had been frozen. Ellen stared straight ahead, her knuckles white around the coffee cup she hadn't touched since we left the hospital. "It didn't make sense," she whispered. "That cart, why leave it there?" I didn't answer. My mind kept replaying the man's blank face, how he hadn't seemed surprised to see her. More like he'd been waiting for her to step out of the light. Inside the house, the stillness felt wrong. We double-checked every lock, pulled the curtains closed, and sat awake for hours. The ticking clock sounded too loud, too steady. When I finally called the police the next morning, the officer on the line sounded tired, like he'd heard this before. "You said it was a shopping cart?" he asked. "Yeah, someone pushed it across the road, then vanished. There was a man. He cut me off gently." We've had similar calls. Always something strange in the road. It's always late at night. My throat went dry. "What do you mean? Similar. Sometimes it's a suitcase. Sometimes a stroller. Sometimes a car seat. People stop. They get out." The line went quiet for a second, and then he said, "You were lucky." I hung up and told Ellen what he'd said. She didn't look shocked, just stared at her hands. "It was bait," she whispered. "Bait." That's what it was. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the window made me flinch. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of floorboards, the faint whistle of wind. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept replaying that single moment, how the man stepped into the light. How Ellen had stood there unaware. Days passed, but the unease stayed. When I drove alone, I found myself gripping the wheel tighter, whenever the road curved into darkness. Every discarded object looked suspicious: a trash bag, a piece of metal, even an old tire. My eyes would flick toward it automatically, waiting for movement. 2 weeks later, I was driving home again. Same route, same hour. Ellen was on the night shift, and the road was empty as always. I told myself it was fine, that lightning doesn't strike twice. Then, halfway home, I saw something glinting in the headlights. A stroller. I felt my stomach drop. It was tipped on its side near the edge of the road. No movement. No one around. Just that same eerie stillness. Like the air itself was waiting for me to decide. I slowed instinctively, then stopped. My heartbeat filled the car. Every rational thought screamed at me to keep driving, but something deeper whispered, "What if it's real this time? What if it's a child?" I turned on the high beams. The stroller's metal frame gleamed wetly, like it had just rained. I leaned forward, trying to see more than the stroller moved. Just a little, soft jerk, like something had tugged it from underneath. My breath hitched. I threw the car into reverse, heart pounding, headlights trembling over the ditch. The movement stopped. I stayed there, engine idling, eyes locked on that stroller. I don't know how long I sat before I finally slammed the gas and drove off, not daring to look back. That night, when Ellen came home, I told her what I'd seen. She didn't speak for a long time, and she said quietly, "They're still doing it." We stopped driving that road after that. Found another route, longer but safer. Or at least it felt safer. But sometimes, when the wind's just right and the road hums beneath the tires, I still see that flash of movement in the dark. And I wonder, what if one night someone really does need help? Would I stop? Would you? Would you dare return to that road? The air that night was cool and thin, brushing against my skin like breath through broken glass. Portland after 10 had its own rhythm, quiet, mechanical, humming beneath the empty skyline. I'd started running at night to avoid people, to clear my head after long days at the tech company where ours bled together under fluorescent light. The city felt different when it slept, softer, lonelier. Liked that. It made me feel like the world wasn't watching. My usual route had become too predictable. Same turns, same river smell, same hollow clatter of my shoes along the waterfront. That Wednesday, something made me veer off boredom, maybe. I cut through the old industrial district, where warehouses leaned like tired beasts and streetlights flickered in long dying breaths. The pavement cracked under my stride, and my music played low, just enough to guide the rhythm of my breathing. I never blasted it, not when the dark had its own soundtrack. I passed boarded-up loading docks, rusted signage that read names of long-dead companies, and hollow doorways where shadows crouched. There was a strange peace in it, that forgotten part of town, just me and the cold hum of the city's underbelly. Then as I turned under an overpass, I saw him, a man jogging on the opposite sidewalk. He looked ordinary. Middle-aged, maybe 40. Dark blue tracksuit, baseball cap pulled low, earbuds in. Stride was clean, steady. We passed each other, heading in opposite directions. Out of habit, I nodded. He didn't look up, didn't even flicker acknowledgement. His face, what I could see of it, was pale under the streetlight glow, as if the night hadn't quite accepted him. I didn't think much of it, kept my pace, turned past a fenced lot stacked with broken pallets. 10 minutes later, I looped back toward familiar ground. That's when I caught it in the glass of a storefront window, a flicker of movement behind me. Reflexively, I turned my head. The man. Same tracksuit, same cap. Now running in my direction, I slowed. He slowed. I sped up. So did he. The rhythm matched perfectly, like a metronome syncing to my pulse. A weird chill crept through me, something primal. Still, I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he'd just taken the same route. Maybe he lived nearby. But then I turned left onto a narrow street lined with old brick buildings. He turned too, another block, crossed to the opposite side. He mirrored me again. Same pace, same distance. My heartbeat began to break the rhythm of my steps. I stopped, pretending to tie my shoe. He stopped, too bent slightly, his hands near his laces, but his head didn't drop. He was looking directly at me. That's when my adrenaline surged. Not the good kind, not the runner's high. This was cold and sharp. I straightened and kept jogging, steady, pretending not to notice. Behind me, the rhythm returned, his footfalls matching mine like an echo that wouldn't fade. I turned another corner. He did too. I tested him again, stopped at a red light, pretending to check my phone through the reflection in a dark window. He slowed, adjusted his shoe again. Watching, it wasn't coincidence anymore. I took the next corner hard, aiming for the brighter street ahead, but the road bent away into darkness. A freight lot with no houses, no lights, only silence, thick as fog. I pivoted and doubled back, passing an old delivery truck half buried in shadow. My shoes slapped against the concrete in hurried rhythm. Behind me, footsteps, slow, even, relentless. The quiet, once peaceful, now felt like a trap. Every darkened window felt like an eye. Every alley whispered threat. I didn't want to reach for my phone. Turning away felt like surrender. Instead, I kept moving, calculating. There was a 24-hour supermarket, maybe half a mile away. If I could just make it there. The air felt heavier now, pressing on my lungs. My ears strained past the thin music to pick up the sound, those footsteps, always close but never rushing, always following. I turned corners, crossed streets, weaved between parked cars. Nothing shook him. He was never far, never gone, just there. Finally, the supermarket lights cut through the dark, glowing rectangle of safety in an ocean of concrete and shadow. Delivery trucks were parked out front, 3 workers unloading boxes. Their casual voices, their laughter, it was the most human sound I'd heard all night. I walked fast toward the entrance, chest tight, forcing my breathing to slow. The glass doors slid open with a hiss, washing me in sterile light. Inside, the hum of refrigeration and the low buzz of fluorescent bulbs drowned the city noise. I grabbed a bottle of water, just to have something to do, then made my way to the cashier. "Slow night?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Always is till midnight," he said, smiling faintly. I turned toward the window while he rang me up. Through the glass, I could see the street, the loading dock, the bus stop. He was there. The man in the tracksuit stood perfectly still by the shelter, facing the store. No phone, no bag, just waiting, watching, his body motionless, like something that hadn't quite learned how to be human. Then, silence swallowed everything. I lingered in the aisles, pretending to browse. My hands shook, but I forced calm into my movements. A worker pushed a dolly past me, wheeling boxes toward the back. The air smelled faintly of detergent and cold metal. I clung to that smell. It was normal. I needed normal. Through the wide windows, the man was still there, a dark cutout against the sodium glow. He didn't move, didn't look away. Just stood. The automatic doors slid open and closed for other customers, but he didn't approach. My heart pounded every time the sensor light flicked on. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 20. I lost track. When I finally dared to look again, he was gone. The sidewalk was empty, the bus stop deserted. Only the flicker of a dying light post swaying in the breeze. I told myself he'd left that, maybe I'd imagined half of it. My nerves were fried from the workday, from the caffeine, from the late-night solitude that always blurred reality a bit. Still, I couldn't shake the sense of being seen. I waited a few minutes longer before stepping outside. The air was colder now, biting against the sweat on my neck. The parking lot stretched out quiet, vacant, except for a few cars and the empty truck dock. My breath came out in small clouds. I turned right toward the main road, choosing the longer, brighter route home. Streetlights hummed overhead. City felt alive, a gun up in diners, the smell of fryer grease, the low hum of a passing bus. I let the noise wrap around me like armor. I kept checking behind me, scanning windows for movement. Nothing, no one. Halfway home, I started to believe it was over. Maybe he was just another runner who happened to mirror me by chance. The mind can create monsters out of patterns. It's what fear does best. But when I reached my building and stepped into the lobby's dim light, something shifted. The motion sensor light flickered once, twice. Then came the sound, soft, deliberate. Footsteps in the corridor behind me. I froze, turned slowly. Nothing. The hallway was empty, the elevator doors closed. My reflection stared back at me from the metal surface, sweaty, pale, trembling. I exhaled, trying to laugh it off, and unlocked my apartment door. Inside, the silence pressed close. I set the water bottle down on the counter and leaned against the wall, listening. My fridge hummed softly. Pipes clicked inside the walls. Every sound felt exaggerated, alien. I turned off the lights. Darkness wrapped around me, familiar yet fragile. Then faintly from outside, soft rhythmic sound. Footsteps, slow, steady, pacing. They passed my window once, then stopped. I didn't breathe. The air felt thick enough to choke. I edged toward the blinds, pulling them apart by a fraction. The street below was empty. The sodium lights stretched long shadows across the pavement. Nothing moved. But when I looked closer, I saw the faint reflection of someone standing directly beneath my window. Not visible in full, only the edge of a cap, the blur of motionless shoulders, like a shape cut out of the night itself. My throat tightened. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. The footsteps started again, moving away this time, slow, fading, then gone. I barely slept that night. The next morning, sunlight felt unreal, too bright, too safe. My neighbor was out by the mailboxes, watering her plants. She smiled and asked about my run. I mentioned the route through the old warehouse district. Her face went pale. "You shouldn't go there," she said quickly. 3 people got attacked near those warehouses, all runners, late at night. Same story, one guy follows while others wait in a van. I nodded numbly. My hands felt cold despite the morning sun. When she walked away, I stared down the street where my route used to start. The quiet seemed different now. He hadn't chased me. He hadn't spoken. He just mirrored perfectly, patiently, like something waiting for the right moment to become real. I never ran that route again. Mapped new ones under bright lights, crowded streets, always near cameras. Some nights when I jog past a reflective window or hear footsteps behind me, I remember that rhythm, the matching stride, the steady echo that felt almost human. Almost. And sometimes, I swear, I still hear it. Would you dare run that road alone? I still remember the smell of antiseptic that lingered on my hands no matter how many times I washed them. Working nights as a nurse near the Army base in Colorado back in the 50s wasn't easy, but I was proud of it. The hospital was a place of order, the steady rhythm of footsteps on tile, the hum of fluorescent lights, and after 12 hours of tending to broken bones and fevered soldiers, I'd return to my small rented room at Mrs. Kramer's boarding house. It wasn't much, just a twin bed, a dresser, and a window that overlooked the quiet street. But it was mine. Mrs. Kramer was kind, the sort of widow who always had tea brewing, but never asked too many questions. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish and old fabric, and the walls carried the muffled sounds of radios and laughter from the tenants below. Most nights I'd fall asleep to the creak of the front door and the soft clink of keys, small familiar sounds that made me feel safe. That Saturday, everything felt light. The other nurses and I had gone to the dance hall on the edge of town, the kind of place where brass music echoed off the walls and cigarette smoke hung like a fog. The soldiers were charming, polite, the kind of men who smelled of cologne and duty. I danced for hours, laughing more than I had in months. By the time I checked the clock, it was nearly 10. The others had already left, but I wasn't worried. The last bus was half empty. The driver gave a small nod when I stepped off near Maple and 6th, my usual stop. I started my 6-block walk home under the soft hum of the streetlights. The night air was cool and dry, brushing against my skin like silk. The porch swings swayed idly. Curtains fluttered in darkened windows. It was the kind of small-town silence you could almost trust. Then I heard it, the low hum of an engine somewhere behind me. I turned, expecting the quick rush of a passing car, but it wasn't moving fast. Headlights crept along the curb, trailing me at walking speed. A dark sedan, maybe navy or black. I told myself they were just lost. Still, my heartbeat began to climb. The passenger window rolled down with a mechanical whine. A man in an army uniform leaned out, his voice smooth and easy. "Hey there, miss. Need a ride?" I smiled politely and kept walking. "No, thank you. I'm almost home." The car didn't stop. Another voice, younger, rougher, called from the back seat. "Come on, we'll take you." "It's late," I said. "I'm fine," I answered, firmer now. Their laughter followed me, low and ugly. 'Twasn't the laughter I'd heard at the dance. This one carried a chill, something mean underneath. My steps quickened. So did the car. The driver leaned out again, his smile sharp under the yellow streetlight. "Don't be like that. We're just being gentlemen." I could see their faces now. For soldiers, clean uniforms, bright eyes, but something was wrong with the way they stared. It wasn't kindness. It was hunger. 2 blocks left. Just 2. My legs felt heavier with each step. Then the car jerked forward, tires scraping the curb. The doors opened. I didn't even have time to scream before 2 of them were on me, rough hands grabbing my arms, yanking me off balance. My purse spilled open, coins scattering across the pavement. I kicked, screamed, twisted. One of them hissed in my ear, "Calm down." No porch lights turned on. No curtains shifted. The world was deaf and blind to me. They dragged me toward the car. My shoes scraped the pavement, heels snapping. I tried to dig my nails into their sleeves, but they only laughed harder. When the door slammed, the sound echoed inside my skull. The engine revved. The town lights faded behind us as we sped toward the mountain road. Gravel crunched under the tires. I could smell the sharp tench of pine and cold wind rushing in through the window. One soldier held my arms, another my legs. The driver's face was calm, his eyes fixed on the winding road. I begged them to let me go, promised I wouldn't tell anyone. But they stayed silent, staring ahead as the headlights carved pale streaks through the darkness. The car slowed near the old overlook, a spot I knew only from gossip, where teenagers went to drink or park. The view stretched across the valley, the town lights glimmering like distant stars. They pulled me out onto the gravel. My knees hit hard. I could smell the dust, the sharp metal tang of fear rising in my throat. One of them whispered something to the others, a single word I couldn't catch, and then they laughed again. I knew in that instant something terrible was about to happen. Then silence swallowed everything. The silence didn't last. It fractured with footsteps, gravel shifting under boots. I tried to crawl, but rough hands dragged me back. I screamed. The sound tore from my throat raw and helpless, but no one was close enough to hear. The mountains absorbed it all. They hit me, pushed me, laughed. My dress tore and cold air burned against my skin. Pain came in flashes, but the fear was steady, a steady pulse that never slowed. I begged until my voice cracked, till begging didn't matter. Then it was over, just breathing. Ah! Just the crunch of boots stepping away. One of them picked up a rock, heavy, jagged, and held it above me. I stared into his blank face, into the nothingness behind his eyes. I thought that was it. But the rock fell beside my ear instead, cracking the earth open inches from my skull. I didn't move, didn't breathe. They stood there a moment longer, silent now, before walking back to the car. The door slammed, the engine turned over. Tires crunched, and then it came back. No headlights. No laughter. Just the slow growl of the engine as it crept closer again. I crawled, dragging myself toward a cluster of rocks near the cliff's edge. My limbs trembled so violently I thought I'd give myself away. The stones were sharp beneath me. My breath came shallow and uneven. A beam of light cut through the dark flashlights. "She's still out here," one of them said. "We can't leave her," another replied. I pressed my face into the dirt, praying the night would swallow me whole. The light swept over the ground, over the rocks, over my torn shoes, and then they passed. Minutes or hours slipped by. Then the car started again. The engine faded down the mountain road until only the wind was left. I stayed there, curled against the stone until my body stopped shaking enough to move. I don't know how long I walked through those woods. The trees looked like silhouettes of soldiers, tall, unmoving, watching. Branches clawed at my dress, at my skin. Fish. Every sound, a snapping twig, a rustle of leaves, made me flinch. By the time I saw the faint outline of the water tower, dawn was breaking. The town looked different, quieter, unreal. I slipped through the alleys, avoiding the main roads. The world was just waking up. Someone's radio crackled to life. A dog barked. I felt invisible, like I didn't belong to this place anymore. When I reached the boarding house, I didn't knock. The front door was locked, but the kitchen window was cracked open. I climbed through, landing hard on the floor. My legs gave out. The light flicked on. It wasn't Mrs. Kramer. It was my father. He stared at me, my torn dress, the blood, the dirt. But he didn't come closer. What happened? Like a mask. What happened to you? He asked. I was attacked, I whispered. Soldiers. From the base, he didn't move. Didn't speak for a long moment. Then his voice came out low, controlled. What were you thinking walking alone that late? You know what people will say? I just stared. The pain in my body was nothing compared to that sentence. You can't tell anyone about this, he said. No one will believe you. It'll ruin us. Something broke inside me that night, not just fear, but faith. The idea that safety came from people you loved. I left town a week later, changed my name, started over. But the nights never stopped following me. Sometimes I'd wake to the sound of gravel shifting outside my window. Sometimes I'd see headlights crawl past too slow to be passing by chance. Years turned to decades. Marriage, children, laughter, normalcy, or the performance of it. But even now, when the house settles at night and the wind brushes against the glass, I still feel them out there, for soldiers on a lonely road, headlights off, searching for what they lost. Some wounds never heal. They whisper instead, through silence, through dreams, through the sound of tires on gravel. And every time I close my eyes, I hear the car coming back. Would you dare return to this place? It started with the kind of quiet unease you don't notice until it's already settled in, that faint hum in the back of your skull when something's off, even if you can't name what. That night, I told myself it was just exhaustion. We'd been working late again, Daniel and I, pushing to finish a prototype before Monday. The office was empty except for the sound of keyboards clicking and the buzz of old fluorescent lights overhead. My eyes burned from staring at the screen too long, and the air smelled like stale coffee and carpet cleaner. When Daniel suggested grabbing caffeine, I didn't hesitate. We needed the break. It was drizzling outside, that thin, cold kind that blurs neon lights into smeared halos. We walked toward Main Street, shoes clicking against wet pavement, the air thick with the scent of rain and car exhaust. The coffee shop's windows glowed orange, fogged from the inside. I'd been there a dozen times before. Nothing special, just another place that stayed open late enough for people like us. Inside, it was crowded. College kids hunched over laptops, couples whispering over steaming mugs. The air felt warm but stale, like too many breaths had been trapped inside. Daniel ordered his usual almond milk latte. I stuck with black coffee. The barista barely looked up, a guy, maybe 20, in a black hoodie, hair hanging into his eyes. He wrote our names like it physically hurt him to care, slid the receipt over, and turned away. 5 minutes later, our drinks came up. Mine was fine. Daniel's wasn't. Wrong milk. Whipped cream, he didn't ask for. And the name Donald scrawled in shaky marker. He laughed it off at first, but when he brought it up politely, the kid's face changed. He stared at Daniel like he was something foul. That's what you ordered, he said flatly, voice sharp enough to sting. Daniel showed him the receipt, calm, polite, but the barista didn't even glance, just kept wiping the counter, movements tight, controlled, almost trembling. Something in his eyes made my stomach drop, that glassy, distant kind of stare that holds too long, too steady. Before it could go further, a woman stepped in. The manager, probably. She handled it fast, apologetic, remade the drink herself, but the kid never moved. He just stood there, jaw clenched, breathing hard through his nose. When she handed us our coffees, he was still watching. As we left, I caught his reflection in the window, his face dimly lit by the machines behind him. He wasn't working. He was just standing still, eyes following us like we'd done something unspeakable. Daniel noticed too. Neither of us said a word until we were halfway back to the office. I cracked a joke to shake it off, something about him failing a quiz earlier. Daniel forced a laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. We worked in near silence after that, The rain thickened outside, tapping the windows with restless fingers. Every creak in the hallway made me glance up, told myself I was being paranoid. But when 10 o'clock came and we packed up, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. Our building used overflow parking behind the block, so we had to walk through a narrow service alley to reach it. The kind of alley that feels longer than it is, lined with dumpsters, humming streetlights, and the faint hiss of wet asphalt. As we passed the coffee shop's side door, it opened. The barista stepped out, same hoodie, hood up now, shadowing his face. A duffel bag hung from his shoulder. He didn't say a word, didn't even flinch, just stood in the doorway, staring. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed too loud in the narrow space. Daniel stopped mid-step, followed his gaze and froze. The kid's eyes, those same flat, empty eyes, locked onto us like he'd been waiting for this moment. He tilted his head slightly, the way animals do when they're deciding what you are. We turned away, tried to play it cool. My heartbeat thudded in my ears as our pace quickened. The sound of footsteps followed, soft, steady, perfectly timed with ours. I didn't dare look back, but Daniel did. When we reached the parking lot's edge, his voice was a whisper. Lo, he's still there. We cut down a side street, hoping to shake him. The sidewalks were deserted, the streetlights flickering weakly. I risked a glance over my shoulder. He was still there. Same distance, same rhythm. Not rushing, not hiding. Following. Daniel muttered. Let's loop around. We turned left, then right, cutting through another alley. Every time we emerged, he was there. Always at that exact distance. Never closer, never farther. By the time the parking lot came into view again, the air felt heavier, thicker. My hands were slick with sweat despite the cold, Daniel whispered. He's not even pretending anymore. Then, silence swallowed everything. The world narrowed to the sound of dripping water and the thud of my pulse. We stopped under a flickering light near the back lot. The air smelled like oil and damp concrete. I turned, calling out louder than I meant to. Hey, what do you want? He stepped out from the shadows, slow, deliberate. His shoes splashed in shallow puddles as he stopped just beyond the circle of light. His hood hid most of his face, but when he lifted his head slightly, I caught a flash of pale eyes, wide, glassy, unblinking. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared like he was memorizing us. For a heartbeat, I thought he might rush forward. My body tensed, every muscle ready to break into a sprint, but he didn't move closer. Instead, he tilted his head again and smiled, just barely. It was a friendly smile. It was the kind that knew something you didn't. Daniel grabbed my sleeve. Let's just go. His voice cracked on the last word. We split for our cars. I kept watching him every step. The kid didn't follow, just turned his body slightly to face the parking lot gate. When I started my engine, his hand twitched like he was waving goodbye. I drove off slow, pretending not to see him. But my rearview mirror betrayed me. He was still standing there, eyes catching the dim light, head turning as I passed. My throat felt tight, my hands trembling against the wheel. Daniel followed behind me until we hit the main road. The city lights swallowed the alley's darkness, but even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching from somewhere just beyond the headlights. The next morning, neither of us said a word about it. We just didn't. It was easier to pretend it hadn't happened. We went to a different cafe that day, bright, crowded, full of chatter and safety. The barista smiled, called Daniel's name correctly, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. But later that week, I ran into a client who lived near Main Street, casual talk, weather, work, until he mentioned that the coffee shop had replaced its staff, said some evening guy got fired. I asked why before I could stop myself. He lowered his voice, almost conspiratorial. Apparently, he was following people. After shifts, customers, employees, standing by their cars at night, the world seemed to tilt a little. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my face neutral. He went on, oblivious. One girl said she saw him outside her window, just standing there. I never went back to that part of town again. But the thing that stuck with me wasn't that he de-followed us. It was how calm he'd been. Like it wasn't rage driving him, but fascination. As if something about us, the wrong name, the wrong order, had marked us for him. Now, when I'm out late, I can't help noticing small things, a glance that lingers too long, a reflection that doesn't move when I do. Sometimes I even catch my own face in dark glass and flinch, thinking it's him again. The mind learns patterns it can't unlearn. The sound of shoes on wet pavement still makes my chest tighten. Every time I step into a cafe, I look at the staff's faces too long. Searching for something familiar, I pray I won't find. But once a few weeks later, I swear I did. Not him, not exactly. Just a kid at another shop. Same hoodie, same hollow stare when our eyes met. I blinked and he smiled. That same thin, knowing smile. My coffee went cold before I took a sip. Would you dare return to that place? And if you think the terror ends here, you're wrong. The darkness never sleeps. It only waits for the next soul brave enough to face it. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch *7 Most Disturbing True Lone at Night Horror Stories. That video will drag you even deeper into the silence that hides between midnight and madness. It's waiting for you right here on the end screen, but remember, once you start it, there's no turning back. Before you leave, make sure you subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations. For more true horror that creeps beyond the edge of reason. Turn on the bell icon so you never miss when the next nightmare begins. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights dim, and your mind open, because the next story might already be whispering your name in the dark.